Hello, this is Carrie with Stampiphany, a great stampin' idea. Today we're going to do a tie-dye sunburst card. I tie-dyed the background and I used the sunburst dye to make the sunburst. So first what I did was I have a piece of watercolor paper taped down to my board, and I am using re-inkers for my paint. Daffodil Delight, Melon Mambo, and Tempting Turquoise. And I just have them on a white copy paper that's just been laminated. The first thing I do is put down a water wash. I just completely cover that watercolor paper with some just plain clear water. And then I'm going to go in with a wet paintbrush and just start dabbing color on. At first it looks kind of odd, but as you let it dry, it actually looks really neat. That's one thing that I'm learning with the watercoloring. It's just to let it dry, and 9 times out of 10 it comes out just beautiful. So I'm just adding some Mambo onto this, and as you see, I'll start swirling it a little bit because I'm trying to get the yellow and that Mambo to kind of mix a little bit to make orange, because I'm kind of going for a tie-dye look here. Now I'm going to add my Tempting Turquoise and swirl that around a little bit, and it'll make purple with the red and of course green. And it looks like a mess right now, but you'll see it later, and it actually dried really nicely. The important thing to remember is that your whole paper has to be wet when you're doing this. You can't just do slightly damp. I did wet it pretty good, and I taped it down to the board. That helps keep the paper from curling up on you when you're trying to paint. In retrospect, I probably should have taped all 4, but I got by and it looked just fine. So now that's done, I have all this extra re-inker on my sheet. So what I decided to do was do the smooshing technique. I just took an old Stampin' Mist filled with water and just sprayed it. I will warn you, this gets kind of messy. I ended up getting a lot of the splattering on my hand and stuff. But here I'm just moving the color around on that laminated sheet, and then I'm just going to take another piece of watercolor paper and just set that down right into the ink. And as you can see, it just kind of hooks onto that watercolor paper and just, I don't know, not like a rainbow effect, but still kind of like a tie-dye effect. It's kind of fun. Both techniques are fun, but what's even cooler is they both give you a really different look on the cardstock, and when they dry, they're a really vibrant color. Now this one got really purple. I really like the look, except for that thumbprint right there. I decided to fix that later, but anyway, once you get those done, you need to either heat dry them with a heat tool or set them off to the side to dry. I decided to set them off to the side, and here I am working on my greetings. This hello greeting is from our Watercolor Wishes Stampin' Kit. Absolutely love that kit. And I'm just using the stamp set hello, the little stamp hello out of there, and I'm going to emboss that with some of our black embossing powder. I've got some tweezers here so I don't burn my fingers. And I'm just going to put that powder over the top and heat set that with my heat tool. So I'll do both of those. And I had done a version of this card where I didn't heat emboss it, but it just needed some more depth, so I do like it better with the heat embossing as opposed to just stamping it with the black. Here I'm taking these little triple hearts from the same stamp set and stamping them along the middle, and I'm taking the word friend, which is from a stamp set called Helping Me Grow, and just straight up black. This is my Tuxedo black Memento pad, and I'm just going to freehand cut those. They don't need to be super straight. At least I didn't feel they did. If you want, you can use your paper cutter. I didn't. I think either way is fine. You'll notice that I'm going to nick off a little bit on the end there, and the little points on the end are not for show. They're actually to give later on my heart that I'm going to put on there, something to grab onto on the card. If I don't nick it off, then the corners of the banner show. So now we're moving on to cutting the Sunburst Out, and after it's completely dried, I'm just going to run that through my Big Shot. Now I tried this a couple different ways to put this sunburst on. This first way is doable, and I left it in here so you could see the 2 different ways I did it. I didn't like it as much as the second way. The second way I felt was much easier, but this also shows something, if you're like me who's forgetful, where to put your glue on those little spots there. So what I did was I took my pencil and I just put a letter G so I would remember where the glue goes, because I have a tendency to kind of get into things and then I forget. So anyway, so I took some Scotch glue, which in hindsight I think it dried too fast. It made it difficult for me to get this on the card before it dried. Later on I used my Tombow Glue, and that worked better because it stayed wet longer and it gave me an opportunity to get it on the card first before it really started to set. So I think that worked a lot better. So I'm going to take my finger here, and the goal was to get the glue all the way to the points. I needed those to be nice and glued down. That would make it easier to pull the middle out. So you can see me doing that. And this is one reason why I'm not a big liquid glue person, because I end up getting it on my fingers anyway. But anyway, so I've got a piece of Melon Mambo half sheet here for my card base, and I am just pushing that down and hoping that the points will stay. Now this part was the part where I was like, I probably should have pulled the sunburst off first before I put this down, and I do that on the second one, as you'll see. So I give up on the cling and just pull off the sunburst, trying to keep those points down, and I found that the points just kept coming up, and you can see the middle's a little messy with glue, but that's okay because it's going to be covered anyway, so I wasn't too worried. So I came in with my fine tip glue pen and just tried to fix those points. This is probably the long way around things, which I have to admit is one of the things I tend to do. So here is me cutting some foam, black fun foam out. That was a lot easier to get to that sunburst raised than if I were to use dimensionals or foam tape. This was just a lot easier, and it's a cheap alternative. So here is my tie-dye. It's a different piece than the first one. This one had done before, and I really liked how it turned out better, so I decided to go ahead and use this one. It just had the bright yellow, and that's kind of what I was going for instead of the muted purple. I'll use the muted purple on a different card. So you run it through the same as you did on the other one, and this time I decided that instead of leaving the sunburst on there, I put my cling on there and decided to go ahead and pull the sunburst off before I started gluing the ends. I don't know what you want to call them, the negative space. So here I am just pulling that off. Just carefully pull it off of that cling wrap. For whatever reason, it's escaping me what it's called, but it works really well. Oh, press and seal. It works really well for these little pieces, especially if you're doing inlaid die cutting or die cutting where you need little pieces to stay in their place before you attach it to a card. It's really handy. So here I used my Tombow Glue, and this worked out a lot better, I feel. I had a finer tip. I was able to get all the way to the ends, and the glue didn't dry right away, so it gave me an opportunity to get it on the card front and position it before it's set. So I feel this worked a lot better, but I put both in there so you could see the difference. It's all experimental. It's okay. If you don't experiment and create, how are you supposed to find the cool stuff, right? So here I am just putting it on the front of the card. I'm using my bone folder to make sure that all those little tips are nice and down. And as you're pulling your press and seal away, you can see that I have it at a real sharp angle where I'm just peeling it like that. That helps it keep from peeling up your die cut. So here I'm just taking a Kleenex or a tissue and just wiping up some of that extra glue. And then I'm just going to take my paper snips and trim around the edge of the card. I'm cleaning off the glue right here because I didn't want to glue up my scissors. And I like the fact that Stampin' Up! Made the sunburst larger than what the card front is. It comes in handy for 12 by 12 scrapbooking, but also by making it larger than the card, it really does make it a lot easier to put it on the card and get it lined up and not having weird gaps in places. That would really annoy me. So here I'm taking my fast fuse and sticking it to my fingers, as well as the foam. I learned that if you hang on to the outside and go towards the middle, that actually worked a lot easier. You could use snail if you wanted to, but I love fast fuse. It's really sticky. So I'm going to take the smooshy one piece that I did, and I'm just going to put that right over the top of that black fun foam, and I'm just making sure that all the little sunbursts are lined up with that back foam. I preferred the black. I like how it added a little bit of dimension. Here I'm taking the bone folder and just cleaning up a little bit of the fast fuse that was hanging out making sure there wasn't anything in those little crevices there. So then I'm going to do the same thing, put some fast fuse on the back of my fun foam, and I really want it to stick down well, so I know I'm using a lot of tape. You don't necessarily have to use this much, but I really wanted to make sure that this was going to stay and that the ends weren't going to pop off or anything. Because this watercolor paper is really thick, so I want to make sure that it doesn't shift or come off or anything. So now we're just going to line that right up on the front of the card, and that black fun foam gives it a nice little, I don't know, shadow effect almost. And then again, go around and trim the edge of your card to get rid of the excess pieces there so everything matches up. So I just went around and did that. And the fun foam is really easy to cut with your Big Shot too. This is great for adding dimension on large pieces. So I have some glue in the back of my card, so I'm just going to take my eraser and just get rid of that. So now I have both my cards done. There's the smooshy technique and the watercolor technique, and the greetings are the same, so the ones that we made just a little bit ago, I am putting those on the front. I used Whisper white cardstock because it needed to be bright and to pull your eyes towards the middle there. Now we're adding our little friend pieces that have been black stamped on Tempting Turquoise. And then these hearts I had punched out earlier, they're kind of in my stash. Sometimes I punch out extra hearts or things like that, and I'll just put it in my stash, and they come in handy for little things like this. So I use my glue dots to put those on, and now I'm using my fine tip glue pen to glue these little hearts out. I punched these hearts out from the Owl Builder, but you could really use anything you have on hand that just makes like a little heart. Or if you'd prefer, you could use sequins, shiny brads, enamel dots, whatever. I think anything really would work. I just wanted to use the hearts because they went along with the hearts along the bottom, and I have a friend of mine that I want to give this to that needs a little extra love this week. So now I'm taking some Glossy Accents. I would have used Crystal Effects, but we don't have it. So I just put that because I felt that the hearts needed to be more dimensional and shiny. This card definitely was out of my comfort zone, but I had fun trying something new. Why don't you try something new? Go out there and create something and have a fabulous day. Bye-bye now.